In this episode, I'll begin to think about the kind of operations that I'll want to run in any future layout. I mentioned previously that I'm very interested in freight and that I will eventually want to include a couple of commercial or industrial hubs that my branch lines will serve. So today, I've set up a very shonky staging yard off a loop of track that we will say is our main line. The yard consists of all three of my larger turnout points to create separate branches, and one of my main concerns is how well I'll cope with changing the points correctly to service my incoming shunter loco. My fear as a beginner is that this could all go pear-shaped very quickly. So the first job was simply to practice changing the points again and again and again so that it becomes second nature. Obviously running the turnouts manually adds to the difficulty, and it's likely that I'll easily get confused about which switch I've adjusted and where that line's going now. Ideally, I'll eventually want to add the electric Kato point switches to my turnouts, as these will at least give a visual clue as to which way a particular point is pointing. However, irrational beginner's nerves aside, it's actually a lot of fun shifting a little Kato shunter about my makeshift layout. Of course, it's the novelty of this being my very first attempt at something a little more interesting than just a simple loop of track that makes this setup so entertaining. It's starting to get me to think about what I might like to include on my final layout design, and a staging yard, or even two, is definitely at the top of my list. The physical involvement of you as an operator in the movement of your rolling stock provides an absorbing level of immersion that had me mesmerised even though this was just a bare bones test layout. In reality, the very basic arrangement that I put together highlights my inexperience, but I knew I had to start somewhere in order to learn about putting together a more advanced layout. Thinking about it, I'll probably want to include any staging branches inside the main loops. I know layouts don't have to be loop based, but I'd like to have one, or maybe even two, in mind, as I love the look of the long trains running majestically around a great sweeping curve. That's just me. Well, that's the freight yard. Now let's take a look at my collection of wagons. I'm struggling a little to find a wide selection of different Japanese wagons here in the UK, but I'm getting there slowly. I've substituted the authenticity of having a long freight train made up of a single type of wagon with a more varied rake of wagons made up of a variety of types. So, my latest purchase is yet another style of wagon, the Kato 8027-1 Tora 45,000 cargo wagon set. One of the practicalities of having a compact layout, I guess, is that you have to do a little bit of judicious scaling down. In reality, a Japanese freight train might consist of at least several dozen wagons. I'm guessing here, I couldn't find the exact number on Google. Well, that's never going to be practical on my little railway. I'd end up with a train which stretched halfway around the whole layout. For visual scale, I'll trim this down to a proportion that seems to be in keeping with the length of the track that I can fit on my layout. Using all 9 wagons I have at the moment seems to produce what I think is a pleasing length of train that fits nicely into the scale of my tabletop size layout. That's not to say I won't be expanding my collection of wagons, as about 9 wagons of the same type would look kind of impressive as a mainline freight train. And so, my shunting practice begins. My little staging yard is made up of 3 short branches off my mainline loop, and I distributed the different types of wagons across these various sidings. I wanted to see how easily or difficult it would be to collect all the wagons to make up a train. At this point, I'm keeping it very simple and not being picky about which particular types of wagons go in which order. I'll save this for later, when I've got used to the basic movement of the shunter between the branches and the manipulation of the various points. I spent a good deal of time playing about with just the basic operation, repeating the collection of the wagons and running the train around the main loop again and again. So as not to bore you with repetition, I speeded up this particular attempt to shift the rakes. Everything more or less went without any problems. The Kato pocket line shunter runs really smoothly at slow speeds, which really helps. And my addition of the buffer blocks on 2 of the branches made the collection of wagons really easy. I did, however, have to be careful with the line that didn't have the buffer. And I didn't include all my fumbling attempts at trying to decouple wagons again. This was all a bit of a fiasco, and I'll have to think about how I do this in future. Now let's take a closer look at the two new wagons I have. This Kato 2-wagon set was excellent value from Osborne Models UK and represents a JNR Tiger 45,000 type wagon. In effect, I already own one of these, as a similar wagon came with the Kato Pocket Line freight set, although there are slight differences. These new wagons come with the JNR markings and also include the removable moulded plastic tarpaulin covers. The 45,000 is a steel-floored large bulk wagon intended for the transportation of large, awkward cargo and machinery. Interestingly, when I got my Pocket Line freight set, I guessed that the wagons that came with it looked like some sort of maintenance train. And as it turns out, from the reference photos I've seen, the Tora 45,000 are often pictured carrying rolling stock axles and wheels and other bits of rail-line maintenance materials. And finally, a little bonus reveal. Another piece of rolling stock landed on my doormat this week from eBay, and once again I have to give a big thank you to my brother, the eBay wizard. In the last Mill Geekachu episode, I showcased my lovely new DE10 diesel loco. It's in the beautiful blue livery of one of Hokkaido region's premier sleeper trains. What was missing, however, was any of the matching passenger coaches, but that's about to change. My new carriage is a Series 24 sleeper coach, part of the Hokutose Express sleeper service run by JR East and the Hokkaido Railway Company. Now, obviously, multiple carriages are required to make up the full sleeper train, and while the complete sets are available from Kato, my meagre budget means I'll have to make this train up in instalments. This may turn out to be a long-term project, but I'd rather complete this train a carriage at a time and then still be able to afford the other necessities I need, like track. It's a piecemeal approach to collecting my model railway layout, but I'm in no particular hurry. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you are, like me, a beginner to N-gauge railway modelling, I hope there may have been something interesting or helpful in this video for you. Or, on the other hand, if you've spotted any of my elementary newbie mistakes, of which I've no doubt there'll be many, please post me a comment. I'd appreciate all feedback, especially if it helps me progress onto bigger and better things. Thanks for watching and for putting up with my ramblings. I appreciate your support.